What is inflation and why is it so important? We're going to answer that question in this video. Okay, let's rock. Let's talk about inflation. What is it? Why is it so important? Okay, so inflation generally is simply when prices are going up. So in a sense, the money that you have, the purchasing power of that money goes down. So let's kind of talk about that. I know if you don't really understand inflation, it's a lot to take in, but let's just imagine that you were alive back in 1970. And in 1970, a suit, a men's suit, like a nice one, probably cost around $100. And so did an ounce of gold. Okay, so 1 ounce of gold bought a men's suit. And we're talking about a nice suit, something that today probably costs close to $2,000, maybe $1,500 to $2,000. Same suit, just 50 years later, and it goes from $100 all the way up to almost $2,000. That's inflation. So what that means is the dollars that you had back in 1970 will buy you less. They're the same dollars. The dollar hasn't changed in the United States. The dollar itself, it's maybe the bill looks a little bit different, but it still trades, right? So if you had stuck a $100 bill in like a safe, if you were even alive back then and you just sat on it until now, your purchasing power is way down. Basically, you can't even buy 10% of what you could buy in 1970. It's more like 5%. That's about all you can buy. And so inflation is something that's kind of scary if you don't understand it. There's a lot of people that think, oh, I need just to save my money and I just need to have a bunch of money in the bank and hold on to it and the bank will pay me interest. That's actually one of the dumbest things to do, right? If you have a ton of money and you don't have other investments, is just to have a stockpile of cash. Now, right now during COVID, it's not bad to have cash, right? Because we need it to survive. But I'm talking long term to protect your money against inflation. What other things can you do so you're not just losing the value of your money? It's kind of scary if you think about it. So if you made $100 today, say in the year 2020, that's when we're filming this video, you make $100 today, $100 is going to buy you $100 worth of stuff. So let's just talk about you're going to go to like the movie theaters, right? You're going to buy a couple tickets, you're going to buy the popcorn and the refreshments, and you're going to probably spend about $50, right? So that's about half of what a $100 bill buys you, right? So that's like 2 dates to the movies and back, if that, right? So if you hold on to that same $100 bill now for the next 50 years and inflation follows the same path that it did from 1970 to now for the last 50 years, it's probably going to cost something like $500 or $700 or $1,000 to go to the movies. So you're going to have to find ways to invest your money so your money is making money and at least keeping up with inflation, if not beating it. Okay, so that's what's important to understand. So we're talking about what is inflation and why is it so important? It's important because your net worth, you will lose money as time goes if you let it sit in a bank. And you're probably like, what does that mean? Well, your purchasing power every single year becomes less as time goes. It kind of sucks, right? Like you worked so hard for your money, and let's just assume, right now in this day and age, inflation is pretty high right now, but let's just assume that inflation was 3%. And what that means is in like a year, you basically, your $100 bill, it would take like $103 to buy roughly the same as what you could buy for $100. You'd have to have $3 more to buy the same thing. And then if that continues, year 2, it might be like 106 and change. By the time you get to year 3, it's almost $110. So like in 3 years, you would need $110 to buy what $100 would buy you, the same thing. And so that's kind of aggravating for people that don't understand inflation. It did for me at first because I always was a saver. So I said, I'm going to save my money and I'm going to let it stack up. It was like the worst thing, right? So you're probably asking me like, what the heck do I do? Well, consult your financial advisor, find people that understand investments and money. Things like gold and things like silver historically keep up with inflation. So let's use that example we were using about the men's suit and then the ounce of gold back in 1970. So ironically, today, we said an ounce of gold was $100 back in 1970. Well, if you look right now, it's a little over $1,700. So if you had held, instead of holding that $100 bill, if you were smart back in 1970, and you bought yourself 1 ounce of gold, like a gold coin or a gold bar, and you sat on it till now, you never touched that gold bar, That gold bar you could sell today for roughly, say, $1,700 or close, maybe $1,650, who knows what it is, but close to $1,700, and then you could go buy your suit. So you're like, wow, why wouldn't I just buy a bunch of gold? Well, gold isn't something that you can, pay your rent with, pay your mortgage, pay your car payments. So you have to have some money, right? Some cash as operating capital, operating cash for you to just live your lifestyle. That's just necessary. So everybody needs some cash. But when you get to the point where you have extra money and you just start stacking money in your checking account, in your bank, in your company account, whatever, and you're like, oh my gosh, look how much more money we have. What are we going to do with all this extra cash? It's a good problem to have. Well, that's when you need to start turning to investments and you need to start diversifying. And that's when it really gets fun, because your money in a sense makes money. Now, what's beautiful about various investments is some of them perform really well. Some of them perform kind of average. Some are kind of like whatever. Some can lose. Obviously, you can lose money. You can lose it all. So it's important to diversify. So that way, if say 1, 2, or 3 of them do really bad, maybe your 4th and 5th investment do really good, and they make up for the losses in the other. Okay. So let's go back to inflation. Like, what causes it? Why does inflation happen? Well, I'll tell you one reason right now as we're going through COVID. What I've seen happen, at least in the collectibles business, I've seen the price of a lot of collectibles just skyrocket. And the reason is because the government printed a bunch of money just on a screen, right? That they send to pretty much everybody and businesses and things like that for stimulus. Trillions of dollars, right? Whatever the number is now, it's in the trillions, okay? So they created basically fake money. What sucks for people say that it already had earned it, already had saved it, is that technically devalued their money. You're like, what do you mean? Well, let's use like collectibles as an example. Yeah, I'm telling you, 3 to 4 months ago, there were trading cards, whether it's sports cards or Pokemon cards or Magic the Gathering cards, whatever, that were worth less than, that have actually gone up quite a bit. And they went up because it costs more money now to buy those same items. That's inflation, right? So one way inflation goes up, and one way it goes really up, they call it hyperinflation, is when the government prints a bunch of money and doesn't have anything to back it up. It's not like they had trillions of dollars worth of gold that they said, we're gonna go to Fort Knox and we're gonna buy more gold from China or some other country, and we're gonna create another $1 trillion or $5 trillion, but we're gonna have an equal amount of gold in reserve to make up for those dollars. Well, that's gonna help stop inflation, right? So that's what's one reason. Now, a lot of times inflation actually happens because labor costs go up, materials costs go up, so hence whatever products being produced goes up. And we're seeing that a lot in the United States with Chinese-made products and things like that. Inflation has set in, a lot of things have gone up. Why? Well, labor costs are higher in the United States than China. We all know that. So if we're gonna start buying a lot of the same items and we're not importing them and getting them super cheap, the cost is gonna go up, right? And so you got materials, like, so maybe there's tariffs or whatever, but a lot of the actual like raw commodities of producing products has gone up. So when you got products going up, labor going up, well, the end result's got to go up, right? So think about like it's pouring rain and it's flooding and it's just the water's just raising and raising and raising. That's inflation, okay? And so it's important to understand what inflation is, because you've got to really start thinking about how you can, what you call, hedge yourself, protect yourself against inflation. And there's a lot of investments out there. Like I mentioned, gold, again, speak with your financial advisor, precious metals, things like gold and silver, which are technically limited resources. There's only so much of it on planet Earth. We haven't mined it all yet, but there's only so much of it. So a lot of people really respect gold and silver as a store of value and a hedge against inflation because it's limited, and it's always been traded, right? Since the beginning of time, kings and queens and empires have all traded gold and silver. So it's always respected as money. And I don't think very few people dispute that, okay? And one of my favorite things is cryptocurrency, things like Bitcoin. I love Bitcoin because it's more deflationary in nature, which is the opposite of inflation. So as time has gone on, Bitcoin the price has gone up, because as time goes, the actual cost to mine Bitcoins, which is to basically serve the servers, to host it, to keep the network running, all that put together is basically what the mining is, that's gone up. And they're not printing any more Bitcoins. It's a computer program that was set originally that only 21 million total can exist. 21 million, that's it. For 8 billion people on planet Earth. Think about that, it's crazy. Now it's divisible by, I think if I remember correctly, 8 decimals. So 0.7 zeros and a 1, you can actually transfer. So that's the beautiful thing about things like Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, and all this stuff, is that as time has gone on, the purchasing power of those things has actually gone up, meaning their value has gone up, right? So a Bitcoin 10 years ago didn't really buy much, right? I think it was 50 cents, or you can look it up, a really cheap number, $1, 2 cents, whatever the number was. Today it's $9,000 or $10,000. So if you had held a Bitcoin 10 years ago and you held it today, it sure as heck buys a lot more today than it did 10 years ago. So these are the kind of investments that you want to find. You want to find investments that are rock solid, that long term, instead of like inflation setting in, they're actually deflationary in nature. That's my recommendation. Now, take it as you will. I'm not a financial advisor. You can obviously win and lose tons of money and life-changing money by investing into gold, investing into Bitcoin, investing in anything else. There's a lot of strategy, discipline, and other things you have to consider when you invest your money. It's not just that, because if you've never invested money before, if you're one of those people that's like, I'm scared, I've just only saved money, you need to understand something. Fear and greed rule the stock market, any investments, Bitcoin, whatever. And I will tell you, in investments, you will experience some of the biggest roller coaster rides. It'll go up, it'll go down, it'll go up, it'll go down. And your ability to stomach those losses, and when I say losses, they're not really losses until you sell whatever you bought, but on paper, you're losing money, right? So if you had bought a stock for $100 a share and you bought 100 of them, you invested 10,000, and that stock's down 30%, your 10,000 is only worth 7,000. A lot of people get scared, they hit the chicken exit, they go out, they sell it, and they lose 3,000 bucks. And they're like, I lost money. I wish I wouldn't have got into investments. Well, what you have to understand when you get into investments is you need to study what you're investing your hard-earned money into. Remember, when you worked for that money, how hard did you work to get it? So you may as well put at least, I don't know, half as much time, a third as much time, a tenth as much time into studying what the heck you're going to invest into, because you're going to take that hard-earned money and you're going to put it in those investments. So just keep in mind that whatever you're doing, and however hard you're working or whatever, and you're going to get into investments, you need to take the time to educate yourself and really understand what you're going to put your hard-earned money into, and then consult with people that are experts, financial advisors, find a fiduciary, things like that, and they're going to help you out. Okay, everybody, I hope this helped you out. I hope you understand inflation more. If you didn't, maybe I gave you a couple little secrets or tips or something helped out. Again, invest at your own risk, but I'll tell you what, it's a nice, fun ride as long as you make money. When you don't, obviously, it sucks, it's terrible, but when you can make money doing it, it's very exciting. And I know I didn't mention real estate, but that's definitely another long-term one, depending on, obviously, what you buy. Okay, until the next video, if you like this video, please make sure to click the like button, comment if you have any questions or if you got any feedback, I'd appreciate it. And please don't forget to subscribe. And remember, in life, no matter how hard it gets, never quit, push hard, keep pushing, and be the hustler.